Mark, we should have dug out your flag. We have your flag here
We
somewhere.
flag pin on our desks. Okay, this is the Senate Government Operations Committee back on the whatever date it is, 2nd of April. And we are going to introduce ourselves to everybody in the room and on the screen, so we only have to do it once. I'm Senator Ruth Hardy. I'm the chair, and I represent the Addison District.
I'm Olivia Parga, Committee Assistant. Senator Tanya Bihovsky, I'm Vice Chair, and I represent the Chittenden Central District.
Hi, nice to see you again. Senator Rebecca White from the Windsor County District.
Missing is Senator Bob Norris from the Franklin District. He had to step out early.
Senator Ann Watson for the Washington District, which is where we are right now.
And where he was.
Yes.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
Awesome. So that is us. We're going to actually start with Representative Connor Casey, the very enthusiastic sponsor of this bill. If you want to come up, because you have to be on the
And
floor,
tour guide, into the enthusiastic everything.
Isn't it the corrections bill? Some days it feels like I'm in prison.
Aren't you actually on the floor with the Capitol bill in mind?
Very soon.
Yes.
That's okay.
All right. So welcome to our committee. What would you like us to know about this bill?
All right. Thanks so much for having me, everybody. It's very exciting to get this over from the House to the Senate. I'm Connor Casey, representative from Montpelier. Welcome to my district. I'm delighted to give you some of the top lines of the Irish-Vermont trade bill, which has been a real passion project for several of us in the legislature. Since we visited Senator Daly and a group of, I think, over 200 American legislators this past August here. The Irish-Vermont trade bill is not unique. It's currently being introduced in about 30 states around the country. Unfortunately, I think New Hampshire just passed it before us a couple of weeks ago. You hate to see it. This bill is largely modeled on West Virginia's model, but it's also passed in New Jersey as well, the previous biennium. I'd like to talk briefly about the strong ties between Ireland and Vermont, because you're thinking why? Probably why Ireland and not another country. It goes back very far. Every day when you walk in this hallway, you'll see a portrait of Matthew Lyon to your right there, born in Dublin. Matthew Lyon was a proud Irishman, and I know there are some stories about his behavior on the congressional floor and getting elected from prison. I can see the tears flowing here, but we accept him as one of our own nonetheless. Ethan Allen, while on a prison ship with the British, had a stopover in County Cork, where he was very highly regarded for his hatred of the British. So the Irish would come on the ship and give him fine suits that he kept to the day he died there. Coming back a little more contemporary, Senator Leahy, our own senator, as of course you know, was instrumental in the Irish peace process. With the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, he helped broker that, which I can tell you, as someone who grew up on the Irish border, I moved away when I was about 10 or 11, and going back to my home country and seeing the British barracks gone, seeing the soldiers not there to harass you on the border, it really gave me quite a bit of faith in politics, to be honest. And I always carry that with me, and I always think, how horrible it would be to return to those days of violence. And it is the strong connections with the U.S. that really have made that possible, the intervention, and that is part of this bill as well. Vermont is the fourth most Irish state in the country. 17% of us boast Irish heritage, but of course on St. Patrick's Day, which we had recently, everybody can be Irish for a day. We have a
I wore today.
I appreciate it, Senator.
What's the very bill? Yes.
Since 1993, I believe, the Burlington Irish Heritage Festival has been in existence there, with 2 weeks of different events, different cultural experiences. So that's also a really tight connection. The bill itself, I can probably let the sponsor go over in more detail. But the idea, I think, when I went over to the House, it was initially put into the Commerce Committee. And we really want to emphasize it's about more than just commerce. Of course, there's opportunities for trade with the tech sector in Ireland. Since Brexit, and I think Senator Daly will tell you this, Ireland is the largest English-speaking country in the European Union. So having a relationship with Ireland is having a relationship to the gateway of the European Union, and there's many opportunities there. So this is fairly new. We haven't done a trade commission yet, but we hope we'll be successful, and this could be maybe something to model other countries on in the future. There is a sunset on it. It's a 10-person committee. We did hear the concerns of ACCD, who said they were very overstaffed and wouldn't be able to manage it better.
Understand. I think they're understaffed.
That is true. That is true. Don't want to lie on. But they're very understaffed. So having the bank account housed with them, we decided we didn't want to burden them with it. Treasurer Pichek said, "I'll volunteer. Bring it up to the treasurer's office." And as such, in the House was negotiated the 10th seat in the 9-person commission for Treasurer Pichek or a designee there. So again, it's economic. Ideally, we could facilitate some economic groups back and forth to talk about a business. I did see Guinness Cabot mac and cheese on the shelf the other day, and I thought, my God, what a great what a great thing if we could do more of that.
That's what comes out of this bill.
But sadly, if you look at like UVM, we had a very, very vibrant Irish program there, teaching Irish history, literature, and that's fallen by the wayside. So having academic exchanges, where could you imagine maybe having a UVM or Vermont Community College program over in Dublin, if we could trade with some of the universities, or have just guest lecturers over. The culture is important, if we could bring step dancers over, authors, it would really be mutually beneficial to both parties here. So I guess I'm the hype guy before Rick comes in and gives you the sterile details of the bill. But I really appreciate you taking it up. I know it's a bit quirky, but I've already heard from so many people who are eager to serve on this commission and just say, give us a chance before the sunset. We don't know exactly what it will look like, but when we come back here and give you guys a report, I probably won't be on the commission, but hopefully you'll be impressed with what they do and enthusiastic about continuing into the future. So I can't think enough. Open any questions here.
Well, thank you, Rep. Casey. Why do you need 10 members on it? That seems like a lot of people. Is there, they're not paid, so I have fewer concerns about that, but 10 is a lot.
They're not paid. It is, when we look at some of the other states, I think New Jersey has about 30 some members on it, right?
Okay.
And the reason they had so many was to make sure you had a wide representation from different fields, right?
Okay.
So if you had somebody from the Chamber of Commerce on it, you might want like 3 or 4 business folks on it. But you might want somebody who could play a harp and sing a song, and have that connection too. You might want a professor on it. So try to be broad enough to represent, and I hope the speaker, the pro tem, and the governor will take that into consideration when they appoint. But we try not to be too prescriptive like those other states, saying it had to be the secretary of ACCD or something.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Any other questions? We have a lot of other people here from too, so Senator Clarkson.
So, I know that ACCD protested, but they are actually the place where this belongs. That is where our international trade is based. That's their job.
Mhm.
I do not understand why we need this at all. We have a full-time professional devoted to developing international trade relations and business. So I'm a little puzzled why we need to do this at all.
Yeah, no, sure. And ACCD did testify. They weren't a huge fan of it. They listed some of their experiences working with the Republic of Ireland and the North. But I would say this is a tremendous opportunity. You're looking at the screen behind me at the chair of the Senate of Ireland in a Vermont committee here. As a branch to say, we want to work with you. We want to work with you in a more meaningful fashion. And it's a form of diplomacy to have a standing committee that would exceed the term of office that any of us electeds have. So they have familiar faces that would go beyond our 2-year elections cycle, who they can talk to and really keep that stability. Because as we see all around the world too, and I'm not being dramatic about this, having these ties for the peace process is so important in a meaningful fashion. Yeah.
I appreciate that, but this is a trade commission. So we have an international trade department. I mean, that's what we have with Tim Tierney.
Mhm.
So it does strike me from an investment point of view, that's where we are developing business relationships and investments. You're absolutely right. From a cultural point of view, great idea to build as
Yep.
many bridges with our sister city programs, with all of those. I guess, what are the measurables you're looking for that,
Mhm.
I mean, to me, anyway, I'm just a little puzzled why ACCD was even I mean, I hate to use the word allowed, but this is their jurisdiction and I don't understand why we didn't just give it to them to.
Sure.
The CCD right now is saying no to all of the things.
I know, but
Do they have a sister state bill, for example?
yeah, exactly, they have just said no to the sisters.
What I would say is it's a little bit broader than just economic development, which wouldn't be their wheelhouse. And one thing I would say, if they're too understaffed to manage a bank account, can they really have this sort of relationship, in a meaningful fashion? It's, yeah.
It's a question of what I mean, if we give it to them, they have to deal with it.
Mm.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, Senator Bielanski.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the inclusion of academic exchange, particularly with my strong interest in restorative justice and the possibilities for restorative justice in international peace building. Our Vermont Law and Graduate School has a strong restorative justice program, and I actually spent time with a gentleman in the international restorative justice world from the Glenn Free Center in Ireland, who also had a strong hand in the peace accords developed through the Troubles. And so I really appreciate the focus on academic connection and your connecting that to the importance of international peace building. And I imagine they would be really happy. I know I had spent a long time virtually with them and they quite generously offered their time and expertise in continuing to have conversation for our nation and our state about how we build peace. So I think it's, to your point, bigger than economic development.
It's a key, when we went over in August, we went to Stormont, which is the Northern Irish Parliament. On our least functional day in the Vermont State House, we can't say that we didn't meet for 2 full years, which Stormont, which requires a shared government, were unable to come to an agreement there. And as you spoke to some of the representatives from each party, these are folks whose, relatives literally murdered each other 1 generation away, and now are sitting down and working. The government was just restored, so that's a beautiful thing. But there was a lot we can learn, I think, absolutely from Ireland.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Rep. Casey.
Thank you so much.
We always appreciate your enthusiasm and we will definitely take up the bill and hopefully move it forward.
All
We
right.
might tack something else onto it though.
Yes.
And if that sister state bill doesn't move, it's going on the, yeah. So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll hang out till Chair Emmons gives me the hook upstairs.
Okay.
Yes.
We're gonna, Rep. Nugent, were you the reporter? Okay,
He's here.
For support. Okay, all right, go ahead. If you wanna come up and join us, and then we're gonna have, Rick walk us through the bill. So you were the reporter, so why don't you tell us how it went in the GovOps committee and on the floor?
Yeah, it's hard to follow Connor, but. Yeah, I guess just, quick intro, I was thinking like from my, background in international relations and the opportunity to strengthen any ties is always good for business and peace. So it's exciting to me on that front. So it went pretty smoothly, I would say. What Connor said is accurate around the ACCD, I get the acronym correct. Response, they just felt they didn't have the bandwidth to do this, and so the state treasurer offered and is enthusiastic and excited about it. And we added a position on the commission for the state treasurer's office, which makes sense that they can be part of the process that they're hosting. And it's there's 4 sections to the bill. The first bill part sets up the commission, and we heard from the bill sponsor, co-sponsor, I'm a co-sponsor, Senate President of the Republic of Maryland, Director of Policy from the State Treasurer's Office, the Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development and Legislative Council. And it was a pretty smooth discussion. I would say overall it was unanimously passed out of our committee. So,
And on the floor too.
yeah.
Excellent. Okay, are there any questions for Eugene? Okay, Senator White?
Madam Chair, and I'm actually not sure who this question would be to, but it went to GovOps. Why did a trade commission go to GovOps?
It's a good question. Good question. Because like
Did it
every-
originally go
It was
to Commerce
originally,
and then it was released and went to GovOps?
It is, as we, sorry, Casey, if I can interject. I said it on some of the Commerce testimony. Representative Chase, who's also a sponsor of the bill, was there. I don't know if I'd be categorizing it the right way, that Chair Marcotte thought the scope was broader than just commerce, especially as we got to the academic and cultural pieces. So Commerce relieved themselves of it and sent it to GovOps.
Oh, okay.
Plus, the chair of GovOps is Mike McCarthy. So I'm gonna guess
Well,
that.
that you can't assume anything by their name.
I mean, I haven't seen any pins, but, okay,
Well, I think
so,
because, yeah, it sets up it's like it's setting up a commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and also kind of jurisdictional change. But the reason I ask is we for sure wanted it to come here and not to also the.
We'll weigh in.
Okay.
I mean, that's why you have me here, just like.
Okay, Allison will wait.
But I think we can handle it here.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Rep. Nugent. Rick, would you like to join us?
But you have to appreciate her green folder.
Oh, yeah, that was not even on purpose. I do just like green.
It's Vermont green.
If you run it down.
Another way that we're similar.
Similar.
I wore green for this very purpose. There we go.
All right.
All right, Rick Stagel, Office of Legislative Counsel. What did Rick Casey call me? Was this, what am I,
He was
What
your
was
hype man.
no, he said I started with an S.
Sterile.
Sterile.
Oh, yeah, no,
I'm not
I
gonna forget that, Rick.
I do apologize about that.
There'll be a time where I get to.
You are so not the sterile.
I'm not, no, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I want to clear up before I go into the bill, what you have, you should have 1.1 of if you see that, do you
We
see
have
that?
As
as.
by
Okay,
the
all
House.
right, I have, so a little bit of background here. It did start in House Commerce, and the bill was referred to House GovOps. It passed House GovOps unanimously, then it went to House Appropriations, and they had a couple of changes, not really substantive, but, yeah, I don't know if that ever came up in your review of the bill. But House Appropriation did a couple of changes, which I will highlight as I go through the bill, just so you'll.
Okay.
So yeah, this is, we're creating a new chapter 111B, trade commissions. I imagine, as Rep. Casey said, this is maybe the start of other trade commissions. This would be the first in the VSA. So 4129, the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission is established. As you all know, it's 10 members, 3 appointed by the governor, 3 by the Speaker of the House, and 3 by the Senate Committee on Committees, and the state treasurer or designee. Subsection B, the purposes are, fairly broad: advance bilateral trade and investments between Vermont and Ireland, initiate joint action on policy issues of mutual interest to Vermont and Ireland, promote business and academic exchanges between Vermont and Ireland, encourage mutual economic support, encourage mutual investment in the infrastructure of Vermont and Ireland, and of course, address other issues as determined by the commission. So the members are appointed for 4 years until their successors are appointed. We have staggered terms initially. You can see there the governors appointees serve 2-year terms, speakers serve 3-year terms, which means the Senate committee members serve 4-year terms. A member serves to the pleasure of the members' appointing committee or appointing authority. The vacancies shall be filled within 90 days. The commission shall select a chair from its members, and that chair may appoint from among the commission members subcommittees or a subcommittee at the chair's discretion. This is all pretty standard, but I just want to go through it. Majority shall constitute a quorum for the purpose of transacting business. The commission shall submit a written report with its findings, results, and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly within 1 year of its initial organizational meeting, and on or before November 1st of each succeeding year for the activities. I think Rep. Casey mentioned that. G, The Vermont Island Trade Commission is authorized to raise funds through direct solicitation or the fundraising events alone or with other groups and accept. I see donations there. That was gifts, and appropriations had that changed to donations because how do you deposit gifts into a bank account? So they wanted to clarify that.
Really, I haven't found that already.
Gifts like tangible gifts.
Yeah, but every gift has a cash code. Oh,
Yeah. Donations, grants, and requests from individuals, corporations, foundations, governmental agencies, and public and private organizations and institutions to defray the commission's expenses. And again, the funds, donations, grants, requests shall be deposited in a bank account and allocated annually by the state treasurer's office to defray the commission's administrative expenses and carry out its purposes. Any money so withdrawn shall not be used for any purpose other than the payment of expenses. And there used to be benefits and expenses. Appropriations had benefits and removed, so it just became expenses. Under this chapter, interest earned shall remain in the bank account. Members of the commission shall not receive compensation or be entitled to reimbursement of expenses by the state of Vermont for their service on the commission. And then finally, section 2 and 3 and 4 on the back page. It's very short sections. I said that. Section 2, the initial appointment to the Vermont Island Trade Commission shall be made not later than October 1st, 2024. A repeal is put in statute or in session law. It's repealed on June 30th, 2029, and the act takes effect July 1st, 2024.
All right, Senator Biehoski, question?
I do, and it is about the repeal and how if that is effectively different than a sunset clause.
It's the same.
it is the same.
And that's just pretty standard practice at this point for setting up these kinds of.
When we were doing sunset clauses, I didn't realize we were setting them up as this sort of repeal. It looks different, and so I was just curious
Yeah.
if that was just a stylistic choice to do it this way.
I think sunset is kind of I don't want to use the word slang, but it's a more conversational term for this, and repeal is a more specific, this is going to end on this date.
Right, but my understanding of the sunset is it wasn't an intention that it definitely is going to end. It was a trigger for the legislature to reevaluate whether or not, whereas a repeal feels like a much more definitive, like this is ending on this day.
That's the same thing.
Legally, so I actually looked at this recently because I had similar questions.
Because we have the bench, that's it. We have-
Yeah, because, it's when I hear legislators, colleagues talk about sunsets, I want to make sure I'm using the right term. And we really don't use the term sunset in law. It has been used, mostly in sessional. But repeal is a much more specific and direct, meaning that unless the legislature takes action, right, there's going to be a repeal on the specific date. So they mean the same thing, but repeal is I think, a clear indicator that this bill will die, or this law will die, if nothing happens to it on or before.
Well, that's what it said. For us.
Senator Thirst.
So I have a lot of concerns about this bill, although I love some of its intent, but I have a lot of concerns about accepting money from all sorts of places that can influence a body that is supposed to be brainstorming policy. I think the purposes of this group, the commission is great. I think how they raise their money is not great. And I would love to have us to really understand what you got. I mean, that makes the ick factor here is a little concerning to me how one might feed the other. And so that I raise that as a flag. And I think it's great. I think there's too many commissioners. I really feel we have to have our professional trade ACCD person on this commission. I think that should be, I don't think we need 3 senators and 3 House members, but it would be great to have one of each of them and then some people who actually are out in the world doing, arts and academia.
I don't think it's House members and.
I know they're appointed
They're
by, you're right, they don't need to be members, legislative members, but I really, I know ACCB does protest, but I'm sorry, they don't, I mean, this is our professional trade offices with ACCB, and so I do think that person has to be on this commission. And anyway, but my big concern is how it's funded and how that funding ties into the purposes, which is initiating joint action on policy issues that makes that concern.
All right, well, we will definitely have ACCD and, and are there other questions for Rick at this point? Okay, we did invite the treasurer's office in today to testify, and unfortunately Ashlyn Doyen is sick. But she did submit written testimony, which is on our website. You can look at it. The gist is that they're totally supportive, and that Treasurer Pichek is enthusiastic about this topic area and agreed to participate at the request of the bill sponsors. Excuse me, and that they're fine with their administrative role and overseeing the funds. So you're welcome to read that up. But I just wanted for the record, we probably won't invite them back in unless you all want us to, but just for the record, they're supportive. Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Rick? All right, we're gonna turn to Senator Daly. Thank you for your patience. You heard our conversation, a couple of the concerns raised, but also general, thinking like it's a good idea, but a few concerns. So wondered if you could tell us what, I know you've been going around the country talking to a lot of people about it. So why don't you give us your pitch and maybe you can respond to some of the concerns as well.
Well, thanks very much for having me at your meeting. It's great to be back in Vermont, if only virtually. And I hope the weather's slightly better than the last time I was there, and it's warmed up just a tiny bit. But
yes, we're about to get a big snowstorm tonight, tomorrow, and the next day.
Oh, just like my kind of weather, I kind of like. But I just first of all I wanted, I suppose, thank you for mentioning Senator Pat Leahy, whose service in terms of the peace process in Ireland is beyond measure. And it was often quiet service behind the scenes, getting things done. And there are people alive in Ireland today because the US got involved in the peace process, but more importantly, stayed involved in the peace process, because peace is not a moment in history. It's not when the agreement is signed. The implementation of the agreement is nearly as important as the agreement itself. And this idea of an Ireland Trade Commission came out of a visit by the New Jersey American Irish State Legislators Caucus to Ireland, and they went to Northern Ireland. They came back and they said, "How can we help?" And I said, "Well, we want to make sure that this generation doesn't go down the same road as previous generations, and that one of the reasons people get involved in paramilitary organizations in Northern Ireland and in gangs in other jurisdictions is poverty, lack of access to education. We want to give them a broader world's view." So they are the ones who came up with the Ireland Trade Commission legislation in New Jersey. And normally, senators, as you know, when you have a good idea, you don't have to worry about someone stealing it. Normally, you have to ram it down people's throats in order for them to accept it. But in this case, West Virginia stole the idea from New Jersey and passed it into law St. Patrick's Day last year. And it is right, while it does say Ireland Trade Commission, it does a lot more than that on the tin. It has the educational element, which is about partnering universities. And I know you mentioned restorative justice, and I think there's great opportunities in not partnering universities in their whole, because if you have a university partnered with a university in Ireland, the presidents of those two universities might have cheese and wine and a meeting once every 4 years, and that's about it. We don't want that. We want the academics and the students to meet. So like the Edward Kennedy School of in Maynooth University, which deals on peace and reconciliation, would be a great partner for the restorative justice department in the universities in Vermont. And that's what we're talking about in the university academic and education exchange. But on the economic front, and that's why I think there's a lot of opportunities for Vermont, and that is Ireland now is the largest English-speaking country left in the European Union. Since Britain left, we see a lot of companies coming to Ireland and Dublin. Leaving your largest trading partner probably isn't the worst idea in the world, but it's pretty close. And since Britain left the European Union, the Bank of London had to move to Dublin with
Yes.
350 billion of assets in order to continue trading the European Union. But over the last 50 years, 950 US companies has used Ireland as its gateway to Europe, using it as access to a market of 450 million people. But this is a two-way relationship because Ireland is the 9th largest investor in the United States of America. And traditionally, obviously, it's the Californias, it's the New Yorks, it's the obvious top 10. But I think there are great opportunities for smaller Irish companies and companies in Vermont to exchange and partner up on the products that they have that they might want to access to the European market, but also for Irish companies wanting to use places like Vermont as their gateway into the United States of America. And diplomacy, like politics, is a contact sport. And the more times you put people into a room, the more things that can happen. So like there are also the building of relationships between state legislators like yourselves and the commissioners, in that if Vermont has an issue with something the European Union is doing, and that was recently exampled by Kentucky whiskey, bourbon had a big problem with something the European Union was doing, they have to get on to the US State Department, who then gets on to its counterpart, then get on to somebody in the massive bureaucracy in the European Union. Whereas with a structure like this, if Vermont has an issue and ye have an issue, you can say, well, we have a platform and a structure with Ireland, and we can get on to the Cabinet Minister for Agriculture or the Minister for Trade or the Secretary of the Treasury. Because Ireland, like Vermont, is a small country. You have to be very scrappy, but like Vermont, everybody knows everybody. So you're always 1 or 2 phone calls from making stuff happen because you have all those relationships. And this is part of what we're talking about. And we say, for example, the immediate result of the Ireland South Dakota Trade Commission, which was only established, signed it in by the governor 2 weeks ago, was the agricultural department in South Dakota University is already working on establishing relationships with the agricultural department in the University College Dublin. And we hope by this August that we'll have that established and set up. And for example, UCLA already has a system with University College Dublin on a college credit program. And that means when students come over for a summer in Ireland from Vermont and other universities, they'll be able to include that as part of their college experience and their program as well. So like in that regard, there's a whole ream of outcomes that could happen by putting people in a room. And I know Conor referred to the fact that New Hampshire signed it in, Wisconsin signed it in, and others are doing it as well, because this isn't just about Vermont and Ireland or Vermont and the EU. Northern Ireland is included in this, and Northern Ireland, because of Brexit, also has access to the UK market as well. And I know you're looking at a sister states program, but this is unique in of itself because Ireland is the only place that has access to the EU and the UK at the same time. And what will happen with the Ireland Trade Commissioners from Vermont and other states is every August they'll be invited to Ireland and there'll be a program set up. So these initiatives can often die because you're trying to get 9 or 10 people to agree at a date. Now, you know how hard it is to get everybody to a meeting in the Vermont State House, right? 9 or 10 people. Imagine trying to get 9 or 10 people to Ireland on a particular date. Well, with this initiative, there'll be a date in August, and this is the date that the events will be set up. If the Vermont Trade Commissioners and legislators want to come at another time, we can set up an entire program for them, along with other people, business people and communities from that. But there'll always be that date. And what we also aim to do in terms of the reporting activity is that we'll set up online meetings with our members of our cabinet to talk about issues of mutual interest and mutual concern, so that you'll have direct access to ministers and members of the cabinet who will be sitting down with other members of other cabinets around Europe. So in a way, it's a way of having a voice at a European Union table on issues that are concerned to Vermont. So I suppose in this, the 100th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Ireland and the United States of America, and last year we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Peace Agreement. And as I've said many times, there are people alive in Ireland today because the US stayed involved. And in 2026, we'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary of American independence. My own ancestor ended up as governor of your next door neighbor, General Sullivan. He was the third governor of New Hampshire, and he was with George Washington at the crossing of the Delaware. And Washington is reported to have said, "Oh, Ireland, oh friend of my country, in our most friendliest days." What we're looking at in this initiative, and I know there's a sunset clause or I forgot the technical term, but that what we're looking at here is what are the opportunities for Ireland and Vermont to work together over the next 100 years. It's not about the past, although we're building on the past. What we're looking at is creating a new future.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Daly. Are there any questions from the committee about for the senator? We're lucky to have, and you're the president of the Irish Senate, is that correct?
Well, if you want to, the Cathaoirleach of Shannon Éireann, or the 24th chair of the Senate of Ireland, like, but my mother only calls me a senator when I'm in deep trouble.
That's true, your full name is pulled out at the same time.
Senator Clarkson.
So, Mark, it's good to see you again. Are some of the other commissions set up with having to raise their own money? I mean, I'm just a little concerned about this pay-to-play piece, which I'm not such a big fan of. So, the private fundraising for public policy is a little problematic. So,
I think, and I appreciate your concern on it, and I think there's 2 points of it. One is it would never pass in West Virginia if one tax dollar was going towards the cost of it. So the idea of this is that there should be no burden on the taxpayers of any state, and that was the way New Jersey drafted it up. And this is simply, I suppose, to make sure that the commission does work. And of course, because it's resting in a public account, I think is the way, it's in the treasury, it's transparent who's giving the money. And I don't think they'll accept money from anybody other than the most reputable of people. And it's really about getting the business, I suppose, in terms of, say, for example, and I know one of the ideas is about public infrastructure, and a question came up at another committee in relation to that. And for example, in Kentucky, would you believe it, they don't have a veterinary school in Kentucky. And they have the largest horse racing industry in the United States of America. And one of the ideas that came out of this was that the horse racing industry in Ireland, which also has a substantial base in Kentucky, would work with our university, College Dublin, which has a huge veterinary school, and help establish a veterinary school in Kentucky, but that the Irish horse racing industry, which is based in both Ireland and Kentucky, would help build the school in the University of Kentucky. And they're one of the ideas. Now, that's going to take a long time, but they're the ideas that have come out of it. And I think and I hear your concern, Senator, but again, it was the idea that it shouldn't be the taxpayers paying for it, but it should be open and transparent who gives the money. And I think people would give it because they want to support the idea of having an opportunity for the academic exchange, the business exchange, but also the governmental exchange. And like one of the things that has come up over the last number of months is having US states have a voice at the European table. And that used to be done through the UK, because the UK had a huge diplomatic footprint in Brussels. They had hundreds of staff that the US government were able to plug into. They've all moved those staff out of Brussels. And this is a way of Vermont having a voice at the European table, but also looking at the opportunities for Vermont business in not only in Ireland and the EU, but also in Northern Ireland as well.
I think we can tighten up that language to make it a little,
a little more palatable.
Yeah, I think we can work on that. Senator Watson, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So not knowing what is happening on the federal level with trade commissions, Is this in any way sort of duplicative of any initiative that is happening at the federal level?
Yeah, I mean, Select USA do a fantastic job for the United States of America across, we're well aware with them. In fact, their European and Nordic headquarters is based in Dublin. We work very closely with them on this. But what we find as a small country is that everybody used to focus on the Frances and the Germanys, the Italys and the Spains when it came to the European Union. And Ireland had to find other ways of making itself relevant. And it did that by being scrappy and, being innovative, but also by working with everybody, big and small, to make it happen. And what we're finding as well, and I suppose this is slightly ahead of the curve in that a lot of people in Washington are saying, look, we can't get any legislation done in Washington. We can't get initiatives done or policy done in Washington. We should, they're moving their public affairs people out into the states, into different states, and they're doing initiatives, as I've seen in your own legislators, initiatives that often you weren't dealing with 10 years ago, you're now dealing with because they can't be dealt with in Congress. So, for example, the event we're having in August, which hopefully, we'll have a number of states sending their commissioners, but also state legislators will be coming. We will be having an event in Google headquarters on artificial intelligence and the challenges that legislators are facing around that. And every year we will have new and innovative sessions around those events in August or whenever commissioners come from whichever state it is. But the fact that 26 states have moved the legislation, I think is testimony to the fact, A, that it's a new way of doing things, and B, while I hear the concerns in relation to, there's 9 people, you do need a range of interests. If it was costing the taxpayer money, I would say, all right, you'd have a concern. The more people you have on it, the more it will cost. But I think tightening up the language around that to address concerns on the money would be important. But I think that factor of how the money was paid, Senator Clarkson, is that it means that states are willing to move it forward, because if it was costing the taxpayers money, they wouldn't move it forward. But I think having those events in August is about bringing people together and saying, how can we work together in this most challenging of worlds where things are changing so fast, and democracy is really, we're finding it very difficult to get people to run for election. People who were there for years are now leaving because of all the same challenges you were facing. And, we can, when you sit down together and exchange ideas, you come up with solutions, which is, I think, part of what this is about. It's about governmental links, economic links, educational links, and I think about creating opportunities for the next 100 years.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Much appreciated.
yeah. Thank you, Senator Daly. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, so I want to know, when do you go on daylight savings time? Are you on daylight savings time yet?
Yeah, so that happened this weekend, but it hasn't.
Okay, so you're now back to being 5 hours ahead.
5 hours, yeah. And I just want to let you know that, even though we've had a change in daylight saving time, it hasn't increased the amount of daylight because it still rains.
Good to know.
I don't know how that works.
In August, what's the weather like in August?
Well, there's a 50-50 chance it'll either be showery or rainy. So it's take.
So that was my experience in Belgium in August. It rained every day. It was never really hot. It was never really cold. It rained every day. It was fine.
It could be worse. Could I just make one last point? And this is to do with the ideas of exchange and the restorative justice, I think, was a good point. One of the challenges that Northern Ireland is facing is the issue of there are still 12,000 paramilitaries in Northern Ireland, in a population of 1.8 million people. And there's an annual report done by the Independent Reporting Commission on ending paramilitarism in Northern Ireland. We still have a problem of young people being recruited into paramilitaries. So while you have an array of conflicts around the world, Northern Ireland has still ongoing challenges, but those challenges are no different than the challenges that cities and communities in the United States are facing in relation to gangs. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from each other. So part of those events in August that the commissioners will be coming to, and I know they're trade commissioners, but I think it's obviously a broader idea than just trade, is how can we learn best practice from each other? You know, what have experts in other states learned, but also ideas that you would have on how we can make sure that young kids who are basically coming from deprived communities, not having access to education or training opportunities, how can you change their futures and the outcomes for them? And that's something that, you know, we've an ongoing, to be honest with you, situation in Northern Ireland that we want global experts to try and help us with. And there's a lot of people around the United States who have a lot of expertise that we would hope would be of assistance to the people in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, thank you, Senator. We will certainly take this bill up again and maybe tighten up the language a little bit. And we will have you back if we have further questions. And I hope you have a good night. Thank you for taking the time late in the evening to join us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mark, good to see you.
All
Good
right,
to see you.
we're done for the day. We are going to start moving bills because we have quite a few of them. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
And I am serious about the sister state bill. I mean,
No,
like, that's
let's-
not gonna move. I'm putting it on this bill.